Hello, everyone. Tonight, we welcome on a guest that truly needs no introduction. He's a hobbyist that collects without discrimination and has consistently marched to the beat of his own drum all throughout the rapid rise that we've seen in the hobby. He's had almost 64,000 posts on the Blowout Forums and has shared his knowledge across 375 videos on his YouTube channel. Without further ado, let's bring out ThoseBackPages. Eric, welcome to Sports Card Academy.
Well, thank you very much, Chris. That was a wonderful introduction. I'm very, very humbled, and I really appreciate your kind words.
Well, thank you for spending a little bit of your night to talk sports cards, hobby, and your collecting with us. So to set the stage, can we touch a little bit about your background in the hobby, how you started collecting, what you collect, and
Sure.
we can go from there?
Well, we can try to we'll try to do the Cliff Notes version.
Okay.
Because that and alone could be its own story. But you know, I'm on the verge of being 50 years old, so I've been around a long time. And like, you know, other people my age back in the day, you know, when you were, you know, in the late 70s and the early 80s, you were a little boy in New York City, you know, I rooted for the Mets because I lived in Flushing. So you either rooted for the Mets, you rooted for the Yankees, you know, you played baseball, you know, sun up to sundown, you played football in the winter, you played basketball, you played hockey, you played everything. You collected, you know, cards, comics, whatever it may be. And honestly, I don't specifically remember how I started collecting, but I do remember two very vivid things. In 1977, my mom was on a date, a single mom was on a date, and her date brought a box. I lived with my mom, her best friend, and her best friend's son. We all shared an apartment. So the date brought a full box of 1977 Topps Star Wars Series 2.
Oh, wow.
And John, her son, and I, we split the box right down the middle. We each got 18 packs. I remember ripping through those packs and putting the gum right in my mouth. Remember, I was 6 years old. So I was like, oh, gum, yum, yum, yum. So that was that. That was my first vivid impression with collecting cards, or obtaining cards more specifically. And then another really vivid memory I have is in 1980, the four of us had moved to two separate apartments. So I lived with my mom, John lived with his mom, and I was a latchkey kid. I know that's terminology that is lost on today's generation, but I would come home from school literally with a shoelace that had the key around my neck in my apartment. Come home, you let yourself in, you lock the door behind you, you know, you do your homework, you have some snacks, yada, yada, yada. I remember all that. And this is 1980. And I remember taking my Topps baseball cards, because in 1980, that was all there was in America. Canada had O-Pee-Chee, but and taking my stack of baseball cards, removing all the Mets because I'm a Mets fan, taking the rest, you do the math, spreading them on the hallway floor, hardwood floor in the hallway, spreading them around the floor, and then going to the other end of the hallway and then running down the hallway and practice my sliding for Little League on the cards, because it acted like great dirt. So you could slide right down the hallway. So who knows how many Ricky Henderson rookies were in there?
Oh boy,
Warren Ryans, you know, you name it. They were probably in there because they weren't Mets. And at 9 years old, I only cared about the Mets. So those are the two most vivid, like early memories. And then of course that progressed into the comics, the cards. I was able, in the mid 80s, I was able to collect both on an allowance, and then everything started getting pricier. So I had to choose at the time. So I chose cards and like put the comics on the back burner. which I wound up picking up many, many decades later. And it grew from there. I didn't have any siblings growing up. I grew up with my grandparents, and my grandmother was heavily influenced. She heavily influenced me in the collecting. She encouraged it. She saw only good things in the collecting. It kept me out of trouble. You know, I wasn't out, lollygagging or whatever. I was collecting and going to the comic shop, the card/comic shop that was local, and ride my bike there. Again, these are things you could do back in the day. It wasn't unheard of for an 11-year-old to say, "Grandma, I'm going to the store, going to the card store." That was like 3 miles away on my bike. So I'd ride my bike there and lock the bike up and go in. And then when I was done, she's like, "All right, be home before dark." I was done, I'd return. I mean, those were different days back then. So that aspect of everything has changed. But that's the very quick, well, let me continue. So that was in the mid 80s, I went cards. And then in the late 80s, I started working in a card shop. Just from hanging out at a shop, they're like, "Hey, you want a job?" Yeah, I want a job.
Mm-hmm.
Basically working for cards, in lieu of pay, you would take cards. And then, I finished college. After college, I was still doing the collecting thing, but only for a few more years. And I'm like, well, other aspects of life were interesting to me. We'll leave it at that because it's a family-friendly show. And I was like, all right, so right around 98, late 97, early 98, I'm like, you know what? I've had enough collecting now. So I went on what I like to call my first retirement.
Your collecting sabbatical.
Yeah, well, I was like, I'm done with this. I don't need this anymore. I've had my fill. I'm done. And then a few years later, I'm trying to give you the Cliff Notes version, but basically in 2005, I had to move. Well, I chose to move. And in the process of packing everything up, throwing stuff out, I started handling the cards again. And I hadn't touched them in, 7 years. I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. I remember this card. I remember this. You start to get those feels again.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, I know it's a no-no, but I threw away a lot of comments, 88 score, 87 tops, and stuff that's not missed in the grand scheme of things. But in the process of doing that and moving and then unpacking in my new place, I got the bug again and started looking stuff up again. I started looking, because grading had been around. But when I was the first incarnation, when I was still collecting and grading was around, it was very expensive. Like asininely expensive, if that's even a word. But when I had come back in 2005, I went back to eBay because I had used eBay in the 90s like everybody else. I had gone back to eBay and I had seen how everything had decreased in assigned value. I don't want to use the crash word, but everything had corrected itself.
Mm-hmm.
And everything was, well, I was at this point I was 34, so I had more disposable income. And I started doing some research on the current state of collecting of slabs. And I don't know if you want me to go into how I picked one versus the other. We might go into that later. But
yeah, we can touch on a little bit later. We're going to touch on sort of the guys that you collect and how you pick your cards. So we can hold off for that for the time being.
So that happened, and that's just, I've gone through different cycles of collecting different things in different areas, and 15 years on, here we are. I haven't stopped since 2005. I haven't stopped.
It's such a cool origin story. I'm sure you've shared it across different platforms, but it's the first time that I'm hearing it in its entirety, and it just gives me warm and fuzzies because I'm looking at a binder over there of 2000 tops or 2002 tops that I had collected and collated as a kid. Just got a complete set. Took every card out, arranged it by team, just plopped them in a binder.
Nice.
And I would flip through that for hours. The set is probably, I don't know, $10, $15, but
right.
It transports you back to that time and really sort of strokes that feeling of nostalgia when you need it, especially these days. It can come into handy.
Oh,
but you've been collecting for quite some time, and we're going to talk about building, managing, and maintaining your collection for the long term, because I think a lot of us really get hung up in sort of the guys that are the hot names now. But before we hop into that, what do you enjoy most about the hobby, and what does the hobby sort of mean to you at this juncture in your collecting journey?
I think that can come down to one word. All of that can come down to one word, and that's friendship. Especially, the longer you do this and the more you accumulate in your collection, and it's great, don't get me wrong, it's great to get stuff in the mail, it's great to win stuff, the hunt, all of that is great. But the friendships you form over time, and again, you're going to have people come into your life. You're going to have people leave. You're going to have people you talk to every day. You're going to have people you talk to every couple of weeks. I have a couple of friends every couple of months we talk.
Mm-hmm.
Some friends I only see at the National. So that's once a year. And it's kind of like going to the National is kind of like a family reunion. Everybody chats about, everybody knows all about the card stuff, but then you start talking about non-card stuff and catching up. Hey, how's this? How's the house? This, that, yada, yada, yada. So for me, the easy answer for your initial question of this is friendship.
That's a great answer. And it's funny because as I've gotten more vocal in public with my collecting, there's people that are in other areas of my life that are popping up, and they all of a sudden want to talk sports cards with me. Right. It's sort of the great connector. So if you viewers out there are just starting out your collecting journey, please feel free to sort of leave a comment in the description down below, or leave a comment on this video. Reach out to Eric on Twitter or me on Instagram. Because all it takes is one connection, one direct message or mention in Twitter to sort of start those relationships.
Yeah.
And like you said, 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now, you have no idea what those relationships are going to look like. But when you get to that point and you're able to look back at the people you've met along the way, it's just as rewarding as having cards that are worth a lot of money in your collection.
Right.
But jumping into sort of the collecting side of things, how you build, manage, and maintain your collection, you collect some pretty big name guys across different sports: Trout, Mantle, Chris Bryant, Luka. And picking up superstars like that isn't cheap. We only have a limited amount of money to buy cards for our collection. So at this point, how do you decide which players to focus on and which cards to pick up?
That is an interesting question. And again, it's something that if you are watching this now and you're just jumping back in, you just jumped in last week after Christmas, your kids said, "Hey, Daddy, remember you had those baseball cards?" Whatever the story may be. It's going to, it's going to be more difficult for sure. Yeah. I mean, like I said, I've been collecting slabs pretty much exclusively for 15 years now. So the prices weren't always what they are now. Most of my Trout rookies were about $50 a piece in gem mint slabs. So not even raw cards. Like my Topps update, I paid $50 for.
Insane.
And it's a PSA 10. So it's just a matter of like I can't stress this enough. It is a marathon. It's not a sprint. You see, you know, if you go to my YouTube channel, and I've shown off a lot of my stuff. Remember, I've been doing this for 15 years. So it's not easy to rush out and just buy every Trout rookie or buy, you know, all the Mantle-based cards. It takes time. It takes time. It takes dedication. It takes patience, because you're going to get frustrated. And it's especially frustrating when you're like, all right, I think such and such is you know, and we all fall for it. You know, I have a whole box full of crap. You know, Matt Antonelli and Billy Roll, and I have all those guys as well, because like I said before, it's the cycle of collecting life. I mean, you're gonna want, you know, there was a point where I just wanted BGS True Gems. And, you know, then there was a point I only want PSA 10s. But for the most part, my collecting niche has been non-gem mints. Like I've always told people PSA 9s are fine. You know, I've always told people sell 10s and collect 9s because of the price difference. But, you know, with everything going on in this 2020, even 9s are expensive now, which is frustrating but nice at the same time, because I've been saying that for 15 years. But it's again, you have to have some intuition, and you have to follow that intuition. You're going to make mistakes. You know, anyone with a great collection is either a few things: patient, extremely wealthy, or just like, I'm gonna win the lottery type of lucky, because it's just not going to happen. You know, Trout is who Trout is because he wasn't super hyped. Tom Brady was a 6th round draft pick. I mean, these things are, I mean, the way I describe it to people, if you want to be 100% correct, just buy everybody. Like if you want, like, oh, I gotta have, like, you know, I'm not very versed on the current day prospects. I know who Torkelson is, but, you know, is Torkelson going to make it? We don't know. Tomorrow never knows. So, but if you go to this year's 2020 Bowman Chrome draft and you buy every single auto, you will win. I guarantee it. If you buy one of each player, their auto, you will have the winner. Just by process of elimination, if you own all of them. But again, that's going to be costly, especially the wacky prices that stuff is now. So you have to have patience. You have to try to, and I say this all the time too, and I'm totally guilty of the opposite, but you have to have extreme focus. Like, you have to have extreme focus. Like, pick something, stick to it. Have a budget as well and stick to it. But as far as the collecting aspect, I'm very bad at it, because I'll do, oh, that's shiny, and then I'll go this way. Oh, that's shiny, and I'll get distracted. I like to say of myself, I'm a jack of all trades and a master of none. Because my collection goes, I mean, it goes all over the place. But again, I also see that as a good thing, because I don't get burned out. You know, and in 2020, with everything that's gone on, everything has changed in the collecting game. Everything has changed. I've always prided myself on, you know, yanging when everyone's yinging. Like, if everyone's like, oh, I'm all into this, well, that means you're ignoring that, and I want that type of thing. Like, for example, a year ago, I was sitting, probably it was about a year ago now, I was sitting around thinking, what are people not paying attention to? Oh, look, 2019 Prism basketball was out at that point for a while, about 2 months, you know, 6-8 weeks already, how it used to be. And wow, I can buy LeBron base prisms from 19, his first Lakers base prism, $1 each. So I think I have 55 of them, because they were $1 each. Like I was winning a lot of 10 for $12 type of thing.
Yeah. Yep.
Like, this is, LeBron James. I mean, why is this, when packs are this price, why is this $1?
Yeah.
Luka was the same thing. Luka's second years were $1 each. So I did that for a while. And then like LeBron's, so that got me interested. And then those blew up. And I said to myself, wait a minute, there's got to be other stuff. So I focused on, I don't know how versed you are in basketball. So.
Yeah, I can keep up.
Right. Like there's a hobby only product that Panini has put out since 2015 called Revolution.
Yep.
And that's as closest to the 90s stuff you're going to get.
You got your Galactic Chase in there.
Right. You got your Galactic, but you got your base card. Looks like a 90s basketball card.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, man, I like this LeBron card. It's his first Revolution. And why are these $3 or $4? So I scoured. I even, to show you the extreme, I went to Beckett Marketplace, purchased from there. Like sport lots. I cleaned out everything. Mm-hmm. So I wound up with, I think about 42 of those or something like that. Just because they were $3 or $4 each. And then I think they're $20 or $30 now, or whatever it is. That's irrelevant. But it was just, it's when you do these little things, you stay involved in the hobby, even during these times when everything is absolutely insane, and it gives you the hunt. You're satisfying your need to win something, to I hate to use this term, but to be right.
Yeah.
You want to be right. Obviously, everyone wants to be right, at the end of the day, but it does add to it. And, circling that back around to friends, that also, like, I bounce these ideas off my really close friends. Like, hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? And then I also, one of my big things, if you guys are watching that don't know me, is I'm about sharing your knowledge. Always learning and sharing your knowledge. So I will talk about it on my channel, which kind of gives myself competition. But again, what, like you touched on earlier, what good is having all this stuff if you're just, you're not like, oh, I have, I don't, but I have 150 Topps Chrome LeBron rookies. I don't, but I'm just saying. And you just have those and you don't talk to anybody.
Mm-hmm.
That's great and all, but you're not really, like I said, it's all about having connections and friends and who you know versus what you know, because you don't know, like you had touched on earlier, if someone had a question to DM you or me or anybody, ask questions. There's no such thing as stupid questions, especially if you're coming back to this. I've had guys that have come back to this hobby. They've been away for 30 years. Can you imagine 1990 versus now? The collecting landscape has done a complete 180. And you're going to be confused because it's just, I knew everything back then. Yeah, but that was back then. And now we're now. Mm-hmm. So let me help you. And I'm big on helping people. And that's another aspect of it. I don't charge people.
Yeah.
To hell, I'm not a fan of like, buy my Patreon and I'll tell you what cards to invest in. And, that's just with it being almost 2021, the internet is not it's not the dark web. I mean, it's not some vast, like, unknown thing. The information is out there.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to pay for it. You can find it. The easy way out, I guess, would be to pay for it, but it's very easy to find out that information. And asking people that have done it. And if the people you're asking are getting annoyed at you for asking, then ask somebody else because they're not interested in helping you, which in turn grows the hobby. There are some major influencers. We won't use names because our viewers can figure out who it is.
Yeah.
But there are a couple of them that I didn't like initially. It's like, oh man, this person's doing this. But now I welcome all the influencers. You want to bring new people in? That's great. You know, does it create competition in collecting? Yeah, it does. It makes things more expensive? Yeah, it does. But at the end of the day, that's good for everybody. You know, it's all about sharing your knowledge and keeping things positive. Try to keep things positive. And, you know, you and I have a mutual friend that, you know, if he hadn't posted on Blowout, of all places, that he made a YouTube video, and I had not been bored that day and clicked on it, because I had my channel up back in 2007, 2008. And then I got bored with it. And then I started up again 10 years later. Like 2017 is the current incarnation of what you know as ThoseBackPages. But if he hadn't posted, hey, check out, I just made this, it might have been a mail day video or whatever.
Yeah.
If I hadn't clicked that link and checked it out, I wouldn't have ever thought about, hey, you know what, I can do that.
Yeah, you touched on a couple of things there, but before we backtrack to that, I do want to say that that's one of the reasons why I created sort of this mini series, Sports Card Academy, because I've been talking to a lot of newer collectors that are blindly following misguided advice of some folks out in the hobby universe. And the last thing that I want to see is someone come in and get burned by sports cards, or end up with a collection that, like, I look back at my childhood and it's full of Eric Chavez and Maglio Ordonez and Garrett Andersons, which were all like all-star players of their day, but it had no meaning, or it did not resonate with me whatsoever. So how can we pick up cards for our collection, like the guy you see right behind me, and really build something out that we can be proud of, and it has sustainability and sort of the likability in that side of our brain? But circling back on two things you said, patience and sort of the stamina to keep up with it. Because I think nowadays, especially, and even more so if you are a basketball card collector, you have to shell out more money than ever to collect the card of the guys that are at sort of the pinnacle of their game right now. And doing that takes attention, it takes patience, it takes budgeting, and you might be able to pick up a card or two cards of that player in a given year. But in order to do that, you have to be patient. And you don't want to sort of step out of the hobby just because you're saving your hobby budget every month to buy something 10, 11 months down the line. So having those small wins, those side projects that you can work on that aren't going to drain the budget, are really helpful. Like, I started collecting Nomar Garciaparra because it was a player that I really enjoyed growing up. You can get serial numbered refractors 50 and below for a few dollars. Like, right. Is it going to be a ticket to early retirement for me? No. But do I enjoy sitting on the couch watching TV, scrolling through some eBay auctions? You betcha. And it keeps me involved in the hobby when I'm saving some money aside for those bigger cards. But what I wanted to touch on is the ability to reset. Like you had mentioned, you had collected just True Gem BGS cards for a time before you switched over to PSA slabs. How do you get to sort of that juncture in your collection and look back on the stuff that you had in there and not realize, oh crap, there's a bunch of stuff I have in my collection that I don't care anymore, and just throw your hands up and leave? What keeps you in it, and what makes you sort of double down on that next venture and sort of morphing like a chameleon into sort of what you got your eyes on next?
That is a tough question. I mean, I know a lot of, I'm fortunate enough to know a lot of collectors, and there are people that only do vintage, and there are people that only do modern. I mix both. I enjoy collecting people I can see play now. Yeah. I also enjoy collecting people that I have never seen play. I never saw Mickey Mantle play. He retired before I was born. So, but there's this stigma that, well, both sides of the fence each has their stigma. Like, oh, no one's going to want, that guy's going to break his leg and never play again. And then the other guy, well, that guy's dead. I've never seen him play. And then the guys, and I see it all the time. Oh, the people that like Babe Ruth are going to die, and then no one's going to collect Babe Ruth. Wait a minute, what?
Yeah.
It doesn't work that way. Like, there's the staples that are just never going to go away. And then there's the current guys that might become staples. And, I do have a rather sizable Chris Bryant collection, and I like watching him play. I have friends that like him or friends of his. I'm not friends of his, fans of his. And it's like, all right, that's cheap. Let me get a few stuff. And then the few stuff becomes more stuff. Now, as far as switching gears, again, like I've stated many times, I have a hard time with focus.
Yeah.
Like, we're recording this the end of December. If you ask me at the, next summer, hey, what are you buying? I can probably roll off a bunch of things that aren't even on my mind now. And I think part of that comes from trying to yang when everyone's yanging, trying to think outside of the box, and I'll be dead honest, it's a lot more difficult now because everyone's doing it as well, which is great, but it makes it more difficult.
Mm-hmm.
You can see that when base cards of megastars are taking off. And if anyone who's watching this is investment minded, that's fine. I don't have an issue with I just want to flip cards and make money. Hey, if that's what makes you happy, go for it. There are ways you can do that, and then you've got the guys, like, because I'm from New York, and there'll be guys that approach me. Like, the first thing I ask, like, I'll have someone ask me, and I'm totally making this up, but it's happened many times. Hey, Eric, my son is showing interest. He's 8 years old. He wants to collect cards. And, it'll be a random DM. Yeah, cool. Where are you from? What sport what sport are we talking? And what kind of budget are we talking? I get those three things and I can make a recommendation, no problem. Hey, we're in New York. We love the Yankees. We don't have a lot of money, but we love the Yankees. I say my dead answer right now, perfect. Jeter. Collect Jeter. Because he was he played for the Yankees his whole career. He's a Yankee legend. He's got cards from $1 to, $10,000 and everything in between. And they're all in Yankee uniform. And you're never going to buy them. You're never going to be able, you could collect the rest of his lifetime and you're never going to own them all. You're never going to run out of option. Oh, I can't find any Jeters I need on eBay. That's BS. You can always find, between all the everything you can find. It was true prior to this year with Brady. Like, I love the Pats. Brady's again, from $1 to $100,000 and everything in between. Same thing, basketball, Jordan. He was at the Wizards, but you can buy Jordan cards for $1 or something more modern, even like Kobe. I still think Kobe is very underpriced in the grand scheme of things. So there is a budget for everyone. That is not a problem. Now, well, you might not be satisfied buying $1 or $2 Jeters. That I can't help you with. I mean, that's, you want to be a big baller. That's, all right, well, lay out the money and buy, an SP9.
Yeah.
Or better. I mean, but I'm always I'm always mixing it up. I'm always mixing it up because it keeps it fresh for me. Like, if I was only collecting one player, it would be great, but it would also kind of just be like you mentioned, you're saving up 11 months to buy one card. That doesn't really keep you interested, and it doesn't keep you, you don't really have that's not right to say, but you don't have when you're staying involved, you keep a pulse on the hobby.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't have to collect baseball to know who Mike Trout is. You don't have to collect to know who baseball to collect Mookie Betts. You know who know who these guys are. You don't have to collect them, but you want to stay on top with these guys. Like you want to have a minimal knowledge of everything.
Yeah.
Like you want to just keep learning. You want to have, like, I've had people ask me, Eric, how do you know that? I just do.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, one of the nicknames of friends have given a couple of friends have given me. They call me the card oracle.
Yeah.
You know, and it's just, how do you know that? I just do. It's just from growing up reading. There used to be a magazine called Sports Collectors Digest. I think it's still around, but it used to come out weekly back in the 80s, and it was this thick on newspaper print, right? So you're talking 350 pages. It would come out every week. And I had one of my, birthday gifts or Christmas gifts. I want a subscription. So I get it in the mail every week. I would read that cover to cover, where I would get the newspaper print black ink on my fingers just from reading it. And just because, remember, I know this is going to be hard to believe for some of the viewers. There was no internet then. You watched TV, you read newspapers, you read all these things to get this information. So it was just from absorbing this stuff all from, like, and as much as I don't like that I don't have focus, I do like that I don't have focus, because I can have conversations about basketball, about football, about baseball, about hockey, even about soccer now, because we're coming up on the 1-year anniversary of me collecting soccer. So it's a beautiful, beautiful lifetime hobby. Like you talk about stamina and marathons. It's a beautiful lifetime hobby. You're not going to get everything overnight. You're not going to always get everything you want, because like the Rolling Stones, you can't always get what you want. But you're going to be satisfied with what you do have. And that goes for physical items, and that goes for friendships too.
You had said the pulse on the hobby, and as soon as you said that, the first thing that came to my mind is that the hobby is a living, breathing thing. And we can soak in all this content and hear other people talking about stuff, but the one way to really learn it is to be in it. And how are you in it? You're in it by buying, selling, collecting, trying to find that new thing, pick a player, and follow what their market is doing. Oh, you got this Tatis 2019 Series 2. It's selling for a couple bucks. I guarantee you, if you're saving up for a gold or a black parallel from that same set and you go into the dark for 3-6 months, you're going to be pretty damn upset when you come out of your hibernation to see the price on that is 5x'd.
Right.
So like you can't stick to one thing, block out the rest of the noise, and then just try and focus. It's a lot less fulfilling that way. The only person that sticks to like the same thing every single day is my father-in-law. He plays a game on like Windows 95, 4 hours a day. But he's the only person I ever have known who sticks to that type of schedule and that sort of that focus. And that's a primary drive we don't have to get into. But you had mentioned the sort of investment side of things. And I know you are a collecting purist, so we're not going to touch too long on this. But I do want to pose a question to you. When you're shaking up parts of your collection, if there's anything that's like considered one of your grails or a very expensive card that you've always wanted to add to the PC, do you ever look at what you have in your collection and say, yeah, like I'll sell some Lucas to try and buy this very elusive mantle I've never been able to pick up?
I have done that sometimes. I mean, I don't want to, 100% one way or the other. However you enjoy the hobby is how you enjoy the hobby. As long as you're not down-putting others or shaming others, or I guess that's the same thing. But, I've sold some stuff. I mean, and again, another thing is, with the current situation here in 2020, without using the hot word, so YouTube doesn't have a fit, but they are collectibles. They are replaceable. If I like to say, real life can get in the way sometimes. Sometimes you have to move stuff to take care of real life.
Mm-hmm.
I mean that, and that is another aspect that makes your friends so important. Like, if I were in a situation where, I'm fortunate enough to own a Mano rookie. So if I had to move it, if something real life came up and I had to move it, I would move it, obviously. And that doesn't mean my friends would stop talking to me. Oh, Eric sold his Mano rookie. F that guy. I'm not going to talk to him. I mean, it's just, so have I moved? Yeah, I've done that. And I know, and it's funny because the whole friends thing is so prominent for me personally. I know friends that do that all the time. Like they want this, they don't have the funds for that, so they'll move this to get the funds for that. And they'll ask my advice, like, Eric, I want to get this particular card, and I'm going to have to move this, and this. And I was like, oh man, do you really have to move, this particular one?
Yeah.
And the other stuff, okay, but is there any way you can get away with not moving that particular card? Because, down the road, you'll be able to get A, B, and C, but you might not find D again. So if there's a way you can make it work, maybe something else substituted for D, that would be better. And he's like, oh yeah, that's a good point. And it's all about bouncing ideas, like not even just collect, like just what do you think of this player, but when you're making moves like that, or you're spending significant amounts of money, and that comes with an asterisk because everybody has their own idea. What is a specific amount of money? To me personally, $100 is a lot of money.
Yeah.
If the card's $20, and all right, just buy it. But once you get over 100, 200, 300, 400, you got to really like, all right, do I really want it that bad? But then again, I've got friends where you just slide the decimal over one place. It doesn't. $1,000 to them is not very much money. So
yeah.
And again, hey, I want to buy this card. What do you think? Well, that's a lot of money. Blah, blah, blah. Bouncing the ideas off each other is very, very important.
Yeah, I think the other side to that too is you tend to surround yourself with people that are very like-minded individuals, whether we like it or not. Sure. And the chances that one of those people collect the same guys you do are probably pretty high. If you need to offload something quickly, the first thing that I go and do is hit up the Instagram DMs or hit up the Facebook messenger group. Hey, I'm trying to offload something. Do you guys want this? What do you think of this? Do you think it's a good price? Because Lord knows that's a whole lot more secure than putting it out into the eBay ether at this point in time. But I think that's a great point. And it's something that we shouldn't be scared of. Like, we want to have focus in our collecting, but we don't want to lose that flexibility to go after something that we really, really want. One thing that I've been struggling with in my own collecting is sort of that mental hurdle trying to get into the next level of cards. Like, all right, yeah, I've spent a couple $100 on a card, but I really want this card. But can I justify spending this big chunk of money and then just like putting it into the hands of USPS and hopefully it like gets delivered to my PO box? And you talk to people that frequently transact in sort of the dollars and cents that I'm looking at, and they're like, "Oh yeah, it's no big deal. Just trust the process."
Yeah, not for them, right? It's not.
Exactly. It's different for everyone, but I guess it's something that you pick up along the way and you learn along your journey.
And to expand on your point there, at least for me, I like to do my heavy lifting in person. Like, especially at the National, where you can, wheel and deal, which is kind of a lost art in our electronic world that we live in.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of, even eBay sellers. Like, I always advocate send an offer. If a listing has an offer option, you'd be foolish not to send an offer. You got to start the negotiation. And I've, not all the time, but I usually, more often than not, try to put the message in the comment. Like, hey, I'm interested in this. It used to, this sold for that. I realize it's your card. You can charge whatever you want, but blah, blah, blah. And then most of the time it's either just flat out decline or just they let it expire, and there's no communication, which is a large, and again, that plays into the friendship thing. Like, I'm fortunate enough when I go to the National, I know a lot of people. Hey, Eric, how you doing? And some of those people I know just from like, hey, I want to buy this. I want to give you this much for it. Nah, I can't do it. Are you sure? No, I can't do it. And then come back a couple later. Hey, you still interested? Yeah, let's do it. Type of thing. Because, it never hurts to be nice to somebody. I mean, if you want to be a dick to somebody all the time, the world can be, that's even beyond the hobby, but the world.
That's what coin collecting is for.
And stamp, right.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point about sort of the lost art of the negotiation. The biggest card in my collection is a 2014 Bowman Chrome Mookie Betts auto, nice. 9/5/10. And we have another mutual friend, our buddy Filmington, and I was going back and forth with him, just talking about like how I should approach engaging with the eBay seller. And this was before the Red Sox had traded him to the Dodgers. So I'm going back and forth with the eBay seller, giving him like Mookie's stats, trying to like trash talk him and say like, Mookie's market is going to decrease when he gets traded to the Dodgers. So you might as well like accept my offer now. But he was coaching me through every step of the way. He's like, it's got these subgrades. Like it's a strong card, but it's got a 9 in there. So like you can use that as a leverage point. And I think the seller was just looking to sort of offload it, and he didn't really care. Right. I was going into all that detail. But it made the hobby more enlightening, more enjoyable for me. And now I have a story to tell rather than I just bought
bingo
a Mookie card off of
bingo. That is such an important point you just made. That is such an important. Each card, especially slabs, tells a story. Like you can have a memory tied to it, and you can share that memory with new friends, with old friends, and they can, we could go on for hours about that. But having the memories tied to the cards as well, it's fantastic.
Good stuff. All right, we're coming up on getting close to an hour, so there's a couple other things I wanted to touch on with you. Being a collector in the new hobby landscape, you've been in the hobby for quite some time and you've seen more than a few cycles. What do you think causes collectors to stick through those cycles and causes other collectors to drop out?
You mean other than financial reasons?
Yeah. I mean, when you talk about financial reasons, are you referring to like, oh, the value of my cards went down and now I'm not interested in this anymore? Or is it I've over-leveraged myself?
And vice versa.
Yeah.
I can't afford it. So F this, I'm out of here. Like, what do you mean? Like, and it's funny you mentioned this because this is something that's relevant to today. We each have our own hobby fund, right? We have X amount of dollars dedicated to hobby stuff. A lot of people call it FU money. That hasn't changed for most of us, but the prices have gone up 5-10 times. So you're not getting any more hobby funds coming in, but now everything is 5 times more that you want to acquire. Now, your old stuff is more too. That's great. But so that's disconcerting to a lot of folks. Like, especially in the wax market, today's wax market situation, retail. somebody asked me recently, I won't say who it is, he'll realize it when I say it. He said, do you think $60 is good to pay for 2020 Prism football blasters? I said, without hesitation, I said, well, since Blowout is offering to pay that for them, I think that's a good price to buy.
Yeah.
Because if a major corporation like Blowout is willing to pay $60 per blaster, and you can get it for $60 per blaster, that means it's probably worth $85 or $90. Now, again, these are $20 items.
Yeah.
When you go to the store and you're fortunate enough to find them, some people are. That's changed. You know, that's not how it was 3 years ago, or heck, a year ago. You know, that's a new, almost like a new normal now. That's just the way it is. Some people, like you ask why people leave. I love to open packs, but I'm not paying above retail price. Well, then you're SOL. You're not going to be getting any Prism. It's just the way it is.
Yeah.
If one of the major wax stores are paying 3 times SRP pretty much from day one, it's not going to be an SRP product. Why would someone sell it to you for 20 when a major corporation is going to write you a check or PayPal gift or whatever for 3 times as much? It just doesn't. Yeah. It's just not logical. So that's another reason why I think people leave. Like, they just get so frustrated. And then there's, I guess there's somewhere in between, like just waiting.
Yeah. Because
eventually, like you said, you mentioned in the beginning of this little segment that I've seen a lot of cycles, and I have. And nothing goes up forever. There will be a market correction. It might be next month. It might be next year. It might be in 5 years. It might be in 10 years. Nobody knows. There will be a correction. And there will be people that will pick up the pieces. Like, I did a lot of my heavy lifting, as I like to call it. We're going on 10 years ago now. You know, stuff I paid, $1,000 for is now 20 times that. Just because I like to collect.
Yeah.
I'm not super concerned about value. Now, as far as we didn't really touch on the investing part, which is fine. Like I said, there's nothing wrong with it. But stick to your goal, and you can do it. It's going to be very costly for some of these guys, but there's still opportunities. That, like, one perfect example is like Johnny Bench.
Mm-hmm.
And his rookie's not very expensive in the grand scheme of things. He's not going to live forever. Nobody does. I've been saying on my channel and on Blowout and everyone, Twitter, anywhere someone will listen to me, there is no wrong time to buy a Hank Aaron rookie. I've been saying that for 7 years, if not longer. And they've only buy a Hank Aaron rookie. Doesn't matter with a grade. Buy a Hank Aaron rookie. And now we're at the point where even like the 86 Fleer Jordan is in the same category. Like, even the beat to piss copies, graded copies, are like $1,100 now. So, and these are, you could do a whole segment on your show just on these epic cards. Like these, like the I word that a lot of people hate is iconic.
Yeah.
But these cards are staple meat, and these are like the real meat and potatoes of collecting, in which I personally, back 9-10 years ago, said to myself, all right, South, I've got the funds. Most of my stuff is collector grade or lower. I don't have any vintage 8s or anything. So, but I've always been of the belief I want to own the card.
Yeah.
In the best grade I can afford, the best looking card I can afford, because that's another topic you could do a whole segment on.
Oh, yeah.
On working the assigned grades to your advantage. That is a very important thing, especially for new guys coming back, or gals, new people coming back to the hobby. You can work the assigned grade to your advantage. Buy, low graded copies that have a technical flaw that makes them a low grade, but they do not look it.
There's there's a YouTuber out there, and I won't spoil it because he's probably going to do a pretty big reveal on his channel soon. But he got a dream vintage card,
Okay.
graded PSA authentic with 3 hole punches in there. It looked like kid had really taken care of the card, but had punched it and put it in a binder somewhere.
Right.
Set that binder away for years. But it was a gorgeous card. It was like a 6 or a 7 that would have costed tens of thousands of dollars. But if you can live with the hole punch, like,
well, my Clemente has a hole punch in it. Like the kid who had it in '55 probably put it on his keychain.
Mm-hmm. And then I was going to say the other thing is you're seeing the rise of these fractional investment companies that are offering an entry point for everyone to get into these big iconic cards. But right now, they're really driving up the price of the Jordans, the Gretzkys, the LeBrons, Giannis to a lesser extent. But there's only a finite number of those cards out there. And the way these companies make their money is by IPOing these cards. So if there's no Gretzkys that are available on the market, who are they going to go to? What are they going to look to? They're going to look to highly graded copies of Bobby Orr cards.
Right.
And like, is Bobby Orr's rookie card in a high grade worth today what it's going to be worth tomorrow? No.
Right.
Well, no one knows for sure, but you got to be thinking about it sort of 2 steps down the line.
Yeah, I actually saw that today. One of those companies did that fractional thing with an 86 Fleer box.
Mm-hmm. It's almost like I was listening to a marketplace podcast, and they were talking about companies that have thrived during the pandemic, and they were talking about mason jar manufacturers. Because everyone's trying to like make their own pickles and sauerkraut. And if you rewind to the beginning of the pandemic and you're like, all right, people are going to stay home, what are they going to get involved with? Are they going to like cook at home more? Are they going to make like create puzzles, do puzzles with their families? Like if you picked Dell
like
or Ball
or hand sanitizer,
if you sort of identify those peripheral companies that like are going to directly benefit from whatever's going on, you can capture a lot of that upside. But I guarantee you there wasn't a lot of people thinking like, oh, I'm going to invest in Ball mason jars at the beginning of it. But that's the way that I think if you're in the hobby looking to make some money and invest, that's the way you should be thinking about it.
Outside the box, yeah.
Exactly. So what do you think it takes for someone coming into the hobby to block out the noise and independently make the call on what is the best thing for them to buy? We mentioned sort of Discord groups and like, here's our daily picks. And as much as we like to bash on them, it's pretty easy to sort of fall into the trap of like, wow, they're actually building up a pretty good argument for why I should go buy a Mariano Rivera Bowman rookie or the next card.
Well, I mean, there's a couple large channels, we don't need to discuss names, that have, I like to say they've won the YouTube algorithm lottery. Because you know one I'm specifically talking about, it's not difficult to figure out. They get recommended, like you go to YouTube, all baseball cards. Boom. Watch this, watch it, and they do. And then they're just totally way off base. So as far as your question is, do a lot of reading, do a lot of asking. Again, there are myself on Twitter is the easiest way to reach me. You know, ThoseBackPages. I mean, I'm sure you can probably just Google my name and it'll come up wherever. I try to use that handle everywhere. But
TBP.
There you go. So, and again, if you're asking somebody and they're like, you know, giving you short, you're getting the vibe, I don't want to be bothered, then ask somebody else. Don't pay for the information. that would be like the very last straw for me, would be to say, hey, go give this channel money and they'll tell you who to buy. But the problem with that is, like you mentioned, like, and I have no proof of this, but if you run, all right, no names, but if you run an investment channel and you're giving out an investment advice, wouldn't you have some of that investment to begin with?
Yeah.
Like, all right, Anthony Edwards is going to be awesome. Everybody go buy Anthony Edwards. Wouldn't you think, the shady aspect of it, I would have some Anthony Edwards on the side and have my friend list them on eBay, and then everyone, oh, buy Anthony Edwards, and then everyone goes out and buys them. So you have to, like you mentioned, you have to be wary of that. Like, you have to, and again, you can, like talking to you, new person who's coming back, you can do it. Don't be intimidated by what anyone has. You can do it. It's going to take some time. It's going to take some money, because nothing is cheap anymore. But you can do it one step at a time. And like I said before, it's a marathon and not a sprint. Because if you look at the people with the big collections on YouTube, on IG, on Facebook, on Twitter, most of these people didn't start last month or last year. You've been doing it a very long time, and you get fortunate along the way. And if you do happen to stumble upon, like, the next Mike Trout or whatever, you can parlay, like Chris said before, you could parlay, like, take those funds and roll it into something else. It's not, I hate to simplify it. It's not rocket science.
Yeah.
It's not, it's a lot easier now than it used to be, especially with the internet. I mean, Topps will give you the checklist. Bowman Draft's coming out. All right. Here's the list of the autographs. Google this name. Google everybody on the checklist and go watch, footage and, read on scouting reports. And it's not rocket science. So it's something that anyone can do. And it's honestly the most important thing is the thing that a lot of us, myself included, and no one's excluded, is time.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be patient. Like, I've got another friend, he can't wait. He's like, I'm going to sell everything and start over. And that's great. And I tell him, I was like, look, you're going to sell all this stuff. He's like, well, there's going to be something big in the future I want to get. That's great. But in the meantime, you're going to spend that money on other stuff.
Yeah.
You know it, and I know it.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to be able to wait. So for him, patience is the biggest deterrent, is patience.
Yeah, just revisiting your comment about sort of these investment groups, it really cuts both ways, right? If it's really that good of an investment, well, they should be hanging on to those cards themselves and then selling them. But if they're telling you it's a great investment and they don't have a stake in it, well, right. Is it really a good investment? Or are you just like pumping content out there to try and get right. some clicks and views? But I think just the entire conversation tonight has really shown me that there's really a couple ways that you can derive value from your collection in your hobby. It's the journey along the way and the sort of memories and the connections to things that have happened in your life and sort of the portal that collection creates, besides just like the monetary value of the collection. And I think everyone's journey is going to look a little bit different, but if you can think about how you can build a collection out that is going to mean something to you rather than, oh, I got a bunch of little cardboard cutouts in a box in the closet somewhere. That's how new collectors and old collectors are really going to enjoy the hobby and stick around for the long term. But I got one last question for you, Eric. How can each one of us be a source of positivity for the hobby?
I think the easiest answer to that is sharing your knowledge.
Excellent.
I mean, it's that simple. I mean, it's the old days back, you know, when I was a kid. Well, I know this player's going to be great, so I'm not going to tell anybody. I'm just going to get them all. That doesn't really advance the hobby. That doesn't spread the positivity like you mentioned. It's just share your knowledge.
Awesome. Well, this has been an absolute pleasure. Thanks for coming aboard, Eric.
My pleasure.
You can find Eric on YouTube at ThoseBackPages, Twitter at ThoseBackPages, and Blowout Forums. If you search an old forum, I give you a very high likelihood that Eric is probably commented and is raining his knowledge down on some folks in over there. But if you enjoyed today's episode, let us know in the comments down below. We appreciate you all. Stay safe, stay healthy. I'm Cardi-C, and we'll catch you guys later.